Guys, continue.
So as we were, right, the reason why I found this objectionable is because Chachma thought that if a person if a belief system, Christianity, takes the position that we're unable to attribute predicates in a univocal way between creation and the uncreated, that exists as a flaw. So what I want you to answer, Alex, is do you think that there's any predicate that we can ascribe to Allah that is completely univocal?
A couple of things on this topic. I would still say that the question of predication still poses an issue to you. And that would be the fact that Christians still pose predications that are not necessarily based in Scripture. So they're not necessarily based in revelation of God. I would note most obviously and most blatantly is the essence-energy distinction. Where do they get the predication that God is an energy, right? To my understanding, and this is my vague understanding, neither the Old Testament or New Testament uses the Greek word energia to describe God. Okay. Now I could be wrong on that. If I'm wrong on that, someone please correct me. But that's an example of someone predicating something on the God that's not scripturally based. And I still think that's a problem that you're posed with. Is the fact that clearly early church fathers take an extremely apophatic view, right? Even we see I mentioned Dionysius the Areopagite. I mentioned Palamas, who even himself takes an apophatic view while contradicting it while bringing up the essence-energy distinction. I can bring up someone like Clement of Alexandria, who takes a pretty apophatic view. Someone like Origen and Athanasius. I know you have thoughts on Origen, but Athanasius, his view on God's pretty apophatic. Now, we need to understand, does this, and also I want to point out, firstly, my view on God has nothing really to do with this conversation. Now, if you want to discuss that, we can discuss that, but I don't understand what the relevance of my view is.
Let me explain the relevance, right? So Chachma dragged me over here. He said, we'll only have this conversation in the minaret. And he wanted to talk about the statement that he made.
Talk about the speech. We
Let
can't
him finish,
talk about the
MVP.
speech if you
Let him
want.
finish. I'm sorry.
So
he made this statement here.
MVP,
wait a minute.
No,
So
let him MVP finish. He was saying, wait, let him finish. No, bro, he was speaking. Let him finish.
Okay, go on.
So the reason that I'm here is because I'm contradicting this message here that you seem to be contradicting as well, that Al-Chachma said that similar to Plotinus, in that they believe that the essence cannot be predicated of anything whatsoever, it's completely apophatic. Now, I don't have any objection with people being apophatic. I think that demonstrates in a certain sense a high degree of respect for God to be unwilling to kind of, apply predicates in kind of a loosey-goosey manner, right? Cool, that's like a good thing or whatever. So if you're not going, it seems to me as if you disagreed as well, because you said that Plotinus himself applied at least one predicate to God, which he applied many others, right, as well.
Yeah.
On Chachma here, right? So if right now the question that I asked, right, is if you can. If you think that there is a predicate that exists that can be univocally applied to Allah and any member of the created order, right? Now, in response to that, I got your listing off the apophaticism of certain theologians. Do you find an objection with apophaticism?
Not necessarily. That's
then
not my
who cares?
point. You should care, and the reason why you should care is because I understand you're a Baptist, which means you have a very funny position regarding church fathers. But if you actually want to...
What's my position on church fathers? You think it's funny? Tell me what it is.
I presume you take a relatively, compared to more high church Christians, a lesser respective view, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being too assumptive. But
high church doesn't refer to the opinion of the church.
I understand that I'm using the. I understand.
Okay, maybe we can move on. I think this is misguided.
No. I'm gonna comment on this because I don't want you to say that and then try to act like I'm stupid and I don't know what high church is. Yes, I know what high church is. I'm referring to high Anglicans, Roman Catholics, Oriental Orthodox, and Eastern Orthodox mostly. Now, why did I say those four people? Because those four people most strongly use. They also the term high church refers to the liturgical practice, but those people also are the most quick to refer to exegetical works as theological basis and give very strong authority to their exegetical basis, okay? Especially the EOs and RCs, more than the Anglicans, they do it as well. Now, so that's before you act like I'm stupid and I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay.
Yeah. So it seems as if you are affirming that you think High Church refers to the opinion of the Church Fathers. What does High Church mean?
I literally just said.
What does High Church mean?
Okay, if you would stop talking, I could explain it. I literally just said it refers to their liturgical practices. Okay, it does. It refers to their liturgical practices mostly, and it literally refers to the fact that they are High Church. They have I guess they're what you'd call a more fancy church, I guess, and kind of American.
That's what it literally refers to. That's what you're saying.
I'm not saying it literally refers to that. I'm saying it refers to that in the sort of American mindset. That's what you'd think of.
You said literally, right.
Okay, whatever. I was being symbolic. But it refers to their liturgical practices. And I said they coincidentally also have other similarities, okay? They have other similarities. For example, they use the Apocrypha, right? That's another similarity they have. They all use the books you would call the Apocrypha, I presume. That being books like Maccabees, books like.
Can we please get back on topic here? I thought you were going to.
The reason why I'm actually pointing this out is just because Christian apologists like you who watch a lot of David Wood streams think that you can.
I haven't watched a David Wood stream in over a year.
I doubt that, but you can make fun of Muslims and act like we don't know what we're talking about. No, I know what I'm talking about. Okay. Anyways, I will move on.
The reason you were here.
Yeah.
We were here to discuss the premises you gave to. Al-Khattab,
no, the premises were supplied by Khattab.
Don't MVP.
He agreed to all of them.
MVP. Hold on, dude. So you came in here to talk about premise 1. If
you asked me to come over here like a week ago.
Wait,
hold on. How can the reason I'm over here be because of something that happened today if you asked me a week ago?
May I finish?
Whatever.
Okay. So your main argument was premise 1. You made the claim that we believe, that we believe in 2 uncreated natures of the Quran. Now, will you prove that?
Were you in the VC when we had that conversation?
No, you told me in Christian apologetics.
By the way, MVP, I wouldn't say. So let me just say that don't take Khattab seriously. He's literally just a 13-year-old kid who just goes on to debate people.
I don't. However, what's being said here is the views of Khattab are being presented as if they're my views. When I made the argument, I presented 2 or 3 arguments to Khattab to show that the premises that he affirmed to be true conclude in an existence of multiple divine beings, right? So what Hagma is talking about here, I can reject the truth of all the premises. It doesn't matter to me. It's not an argument that I supply the premises to. It's an argument that Khattab supplies the premises to. So this doesn't matter. Who cares?
No, you said I believe in 2 natures. Do you want me to pull up a screenshot?
A person that okay. Do you know what a deductive argument is?
That does not matter. You said I believe in 2 natures.
Okay.
I will bring you the quote right now.
MVP.
Okay.
Let me actually explain something. So
let's
MVP is gonna clearly, and I know what he's gonna do. He's gonna kind of misrepresent what a reductio is, which is what I believe what he's talking about.
No. Talking about a deductive argument. Do you know what a deductive argument is?
Are you referring to a reductio?
So you don't. Well, if I said that the argument I'm presenting is valid, what would that mean? What is a valid argument?
It's a true argument.
It's true. Okay. So you don't know what a valid argument is, right?
Well,
the definition of a valid argument.
So what's funny is when you give vague terms. Of meaning, which is
univocity of meaning,
which doesn't exist.
It absolutely is.
It's called univocity of being. You've never read SCOTUS or any Church Father in your life. I'd be very surprised if you had. But besides the point, when it comes to validity, which is what you're referring to what's called logical validity, right? So why didn't you say logical validity? What it's literally always referred as.
What I exactly said is what is a valid argument.
No.
That is exactly what I said.
Find me. When is it? No.
Jay, we'll have to quit. We'll have to pull up the tape here. All right, Jai.
You did say that, but what you said, and I agree that you said that. But what's funny about that is that
I asked you what a deductive argument is.
That term is not what is commonly used or refer to that concept. Again, you're being manipulative in that you're using terms, unpopular terms of popular philosophical concepts as to try to paint your opponent as an idiot.
Right. So here, I'm going to go ahead and post. I just did a quick Google search here. We'll post from Stanford.edu, right?
Yeah.
And this is on an introduction to philosophy, validity and invalidity, soundness and unsoundness, right?
Yeah. So now, what's interesting? What's the term?
What it says here? Valid. An argument is valid if and only if it.
What's the first term there? What's the first term there? In that title.
Deductive argument.
No. What's the first word in that title you just gave? You said it's called
validity and invalidity.
Oh, so validity, right? So what's the concept's called logical validity? It's not called a valid argument. Now we could say an argument has
valid
validity.
argument is an argument that is valid.
No, a valid argument is a vague term, and you're using it on purpose to be manipulative. But besides the point, go on with your point, and please tell me what you think a deductive argument is.
So
because obviously you've never read actual philosophy in your life, but please tell me what you think it is.
I mean, I'm quoting almost exactly this page here that I looked up here.
Yeah, right? even though that concept's a logical validity.
Yeah, a valid deductive argument is an argument in which the truth of the conclusion flows necessarily from the truth of the premises, right? Now, validity refers. Yeah, it is what you said after you looked it up, right? So validity refers.
It's when I said it's a true argument.
No.
Yes.
Guys, please allow each other to speak.
A true argument is an argument that is sound, right? I can supply a valid argument, right, that is not true. For example, A implies B, A, therefore B, right? That's a valid argument, right? Validity refers exclusively to the form of the argument, not the content whatsoever, right? I can put false content in A and B, therefore creating false premises.
So what's interesting is that now you've presented. Now you've gone to some nice William Lane Craig level presentism. So if I give you a if I give you a reductio that's not necessarily true, is it like if I give you a reductio that I don't know, like the famous black swan, all swans are white, which is not a true argument. Let's say I make that argument, and let's say it's not true because we know there's black swan, but I make that argument. Let's say it's a valid argument. Therefore, you can conclude it's a truthful argument in the sense that it truthfully applies.
Even this is very funny.
Yeah. So what's funny is that the fact that you're basically a presentist who doesn't believe the concept that ideas are true.
No. You're unfamiliar with what soundness is, right? Okay. So an argument that is true basically has 2 parts to it, right? An argument that has a valid form, if the truth of the premises are in there, it then becomes sound, because a sound argument is a argument that is valid and has true premises, therefore necessitating a true conclusion, right? So when you said that validity is sound, that's a very basic error, right? Validity means truth. That's a very basic error. Validity simply deals to the form, but not the content of the argument. So anyhow,
so what's funny is the fact that
please let me try to get this conversation back on. Right. So whenever Hakma here supplies these premises, and he says, "Oh, why do you believe these?" I don't believe these. These are the premises that are supplied by what was his name, Kitab or whatever.
Okay.
He affirms the truth of the premises. Right. I have supplied the logical form, which is a valid logical argument here. I have plugged in his premises that he affirms to be true. Which then necessitates him, if he's going to be rational, to affirm the validity of the conclusion.
Okay.
Right?
But you literally said, in that screenshot is sent in Lounge VC, you said, so you believe in two uncreated beings of the Quran. I sent it in Lounge VC. Now we can read it.
This?
We can read it together.
So let me ask you a question, MVP. If I make a reductio against your point, okay? And I'm not saying you made a reductio. I'm saying as an example. if I make a reductio against anyone's point, the implication of that point, okay, what a reductio actually serves to do is to say, okay, you believe X, the logical conclusion of X is Y, by reducing it, right? By doing a reductio, okay? That implies that it's in the person's that Y is a part of the person's belief, even if it's subconscious, right? Even if it's a logical conclusion.
It has nothing to do with consciousness or anything like that. Reductio ad absurdums draw out an implicit affirmation in an explicit affirmation.
I know you've read a lot of articles about Kant and all them, and that you spend your whole time in this philosophical jargon. But I'm using
15 minutes ago, you said I've never read a philosopher.
Oh no, yeah, you haven't.
All right, can we move on, guys? This is just semantics.
Exactly. This is ridiculous.
So my point is,
my point
is that if you're doing a reductio against, and this is my whole point this whole time, if you're doing a reductio against Hawk, you are making the claim he believes that. Okay.
No, I am not.
Okay,
wait. Deductive. Oh my goodness. So let me try. Oh my. Okay, let me come.
MVP, you said I believe in two uncreated beings of the essence of the speech of God. So
wait,
prove
it. Are you talking about whenever you affirm that there's a non-identicality between the?
Wait a minute.
What statement are you referring?
MVP, hold on. Prove I believe in two uncreated natures, the essences of the speech of God.
Okay, so you agree that there's a non-identicality between the speech of Allah and Allah Himself. Are those two things identical?
Would a non-identicality mean separation?
No, a thing that has a part that is.
No, it's not. It's not a part.
So a non-identicality does not necessitates separation in I think the way that you're talking about.
No, right? if you're saying it's not identical,
I'm talking about mereological distinction.
You're trying to say it's composition. You're trying to say it's separability, and
it doesn't matter what I'm trying to say here. You either affirm or negate that there is an identicality between the speech of Allah or and Allah.
Is the essence of speech
Allah identical to His speech? Yes or no?
Those attributes speech.
I think when you say Allah, you're referring to His essence specifically.
Yeah. Those attributes.
Yeah, so we say that the speech of Allah, all the attributes of God are distinct from His essence, according to the Sunni position.
Okay, all right. I'm asking all
distinct but not separate, though.
Yeah,
that's
so
we
say
but not separate. Okay.
Yeah. Distinction is not.
You do realize that this is the position of the EOs on the energies, right?
Wait a minute.
Well,
that's
what I thought was so funny about the J-Dyer debate that we saw today, because like I was affirming in essence energy separation unintentionally.
If you believe a distinction entails on separability, then your whole Trinity falls. So,
look,
anyways,
I'm not concerned with what you think follows from whatever you're trying to say.
If you have a distinction, wait.
I would like you to affirm.
Does a distinction
identical to His speech? Yes or no?
Okay, answer this. Does a distinction entail?
Did you say yes?
Does a distinction entail separation?
You didn't say yes.
Did he say yes?
No,
I didn't. I told him to say just no, because we do believe that that they're not identical, they're distinct.
Okay. So then it follows, right? Since the speech of Allah is non-identical to His essence, these are two distinct beings. The being
they're not
Allah,
beings. No, they're not beings.
I'm using philosophical
they're
terms.
in possession.
How is an attribute of being?
It does not matter.
A thing that has existence is a being. That's what it means.
Wait a minute.
If you're familiar with ADS discussion related to Ash'ariism, you should see that one of the reasons why they group the attributes intrinsically to Allah and being identical to each other is because an attribute that is extrinsic to Allah is a different being, right? Because being means
hang on a second. Stop it there. One second. Can you repeat the last part again? You said that
repeat
somehow existence entails being of being. Okay,
an attribute that is extrinsic to Allah is a separate being, right? Can
you justify that?
This is the discussion in Ash'ariism, I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, you want to play Ash'ari?
No Ash'ari. Wait one second. No, I'm an Ash'ari as well, by the way. No Ash'ari affirms that distinction entails being a separate being.
No. Attributes that, if an attribute was extrinsic to Allah, that would constitute a separate being, right?
No, it would not. No, it would not.
Wait. Think of it in the EO perception. It's just it's an energy of light.
No.
You know, have you heard of EED?
Look. The essence energy distinction in Eastern Orthodoxy does not affirm that his attributes are extrinsic to himself. It's that his activity is extrinsic.
No, wait.
The EOs affirm that the energies that the EOs affirm that the energies of God are distinct from his essence. This is a well-known thing.
I don't care. If you're saying that the speech of Allah is non-identical to Allah, you are affirming that there are two things that exist, right? Does Allah's speech exist?
Yep, it does.
Does Allah exist?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so these are two things that exist, which is what being is, that are non-identical. And Hakma, you affirmed in the other server that both of these are uncreated. Allah's uncreated, his speech is uncreated, right?
Okay, but
so you asked me to support.
Let him just finish.
You asked me to support. You asked me to support what I said, that you affirmed the existence of two uncreated beings, and we just stepped through it, and you just affirmed all of the premises. Premise one. Wait, hold on.
Premise one.
Allah is non-identical to his speech. Premise one.
Okay, let him finish his sentence, bro. Let me hear it.
Now it's my turn to speak.
Go ahead.
First of all, a distinction will not entail separation. Read the quote I gave you in Lounge VC. This is from Al-Ashari. He says, furthermore, the meaning Gariya is the possibility of separation of one of two existent things from the other in one way or another. Thus, when it was demonstrated God and his knowledge are eternal, it is impossible for them to be ghayran. In other words, what it means to be other is for it to be separate in one way or another. That separability can be a separability in substrate, or a separability in existence, or a separability in time or location. But since God's knowledge necessarily exists in him, meaning those attributes subsist in the essence of God, then they are both eternal in their existence. It follows that they are inseparable and therefore not other. We can give you Qasim ibn Faraq, who also held this view. So when we say distinction, we say that distinction is a distinction in meaning, not a distinction in reality. So if God's knowledge is distinct from his essence, we say his knowledge is possessed by the essence of God. It's possessed by God himself. So we say God knows he has that speech. God knows he has that knowledge. But that would not entail a separability, because that is impossible. A separability would entail that he has that speech. Unless you from an ADS.
Thank you. That had no relation at all to what we're talking about.
Do you from an ADS? Is that my question?
No, I don't. Now, let's look at, I've supplied the premises.
Two things. Yes, it does apply to what he said. And the reason why it applies to what you said is because he defined he defined how they define what different things are. Okay? So he's telling you why they don't believe these are different concepts. Okay? Now, that is what he's doing.
Yeah, a person making an explicit affirmation that these things are not separate doesn't matter if the affirmation that these are two separate beings is entailed from other affirmations he's made, right? Now, it is necessarily entailed that two things are separate beings or separate things if those two things are non-identical. This is a basic point of divine simplicity. I think everyone here affirms divine simplicity.
No one affirms in divine simplicity except Alex. So if you mean it, wait a minute.
Divine simplicity.
So
right, okay. So divine simplicity can be defined as there exists
divine forms of divine simplicity.
Okay, divine simplicity in general.
Don't speak over each other, by the way.
I'm not talking about
just you know, MVP, just letting you know the definition of divine simplicity that I think is one that is agreed upon. It's just the fact that God is not composed of parts. Period. And we agree on that.
Exactly.
However,
so he's not composed of parts.
But the extra step of saying that the attributes are identical to the essence, that is ADS.
How do we know what a part is? What's the definition of a part?
What type of question is that? What is the definition of a part?
Well, because one of the ways that advocates of divine simplicity identify mereological complexity, anything that they're saying that is simple, is if that thing has any part of it that is non-identical to the whole, right? So it's a basic concept in divine simplicity that the identicality of everything intrinsic to that thing that is simple must be identical to every other thing. So the affirmation that a divine simplicity advocate must make is that the attributes of Allah are identical to each other. His power is identical to his love, and so on and so forth, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, by the way, AES in of itself, we can make arguments in of itself.
Do you think that a person that affirms the divine simplicity of Allah can affirm that his attributes are non-identical to each other?
Wait, repeat that again?
Do you think that a person can affirm the divine simplicity of Allah and affirm that Allah's attributes are non-identical to each other?
Yep, I believe in divine simplicity, right? And again,
you think that Allah's attributes are non-identical?
Well, I'm saying that the attributes are not identical to the essence, right? But let me answer one real quick. But just so we get our definition straight, right?
Hold on, before you move on, you just said that Allah's attributes are not identical to his essence.
I have nothing to say real fast. I'll let you.
Right.
Before you do, I just want to affirm that one more time real quick.
Okay.
Well, okay, yeah. We usually say that the attributes are distinct from the essence of Allah.
Okay.
Okay, it's a well-known thing. And now the Shiites do affirm ADS like you guys, but we don't. What?
Like you guys, me?
No,
I don't affirm ADS.
Well, I'm talking Protestants in general.
But yeah.
Okay.
Well, EOs kind of resemble our belief a little bit, but anyways. Divine simplicity, just so we got our definitions right. Divine simplicity, I would define it, and I think this is the standard definition, is just that it is merely the belief that God is not composed of parts. God's essence is simple, right?
Right.
It is
not composed of parts. And so if
now,
this definition is non-circular, you have to offer a definition of parts, right? What is a part?
No, I'll come to that.
I'll define a part, and I'm gonna get just to see. An MVP might disagree with me on this. I don't know, but I would say a part would be, at least for the sake of debate, a segment or a composite. And what I mean by that is something that's identifiable either within or as something that's within something, like this, in the sense that how can I put this? Okay, I'll put it this way. It is simply something that is really distinct. Okay, that's a really important word. A really distinct thing that is also simultaneously supposed to be a part of it. And what I mean by a part of it is, I mean it composes its being.
Intrinsic.
Yeah,
intrinsic to it. Okay. Exactly. So
so
the definition.
I want to say something.
I really like an agreement on this before we move on. So the definition we're going forward with of parthood is something that is identifiable or really distinct, that is supposed to be intrinsic, right? Does everyone agree?
I guess.
Okay. Now, on this, before we move on, real quick, I'm sorry to do this again, but when you say identifiable, you mean that it has an identity, right?
Right. Wait, can you elaborate? What are we talking about here?
That it has an identity, right? The law of identity is that A equals A, right? A thing that has attributes? An identity. I'm talking about identity in general. We're not moving on to attributes yet, right?
Okay.
So something that is a part is something that is identifiable or really distinct, that is supposed to be intrinsic. So what you're affirming here is that parts have identities, right?
Parts have identities. I mean,
Alex, would you like to weigh in? This is the definition you supplied, right?
Yeah. So I would say, well, because parts can have identity. Things can have identity while not necessarily being a part. So I can say.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Yeah.
For example,
right, I'm not saying that a part.
Yeah, because something that's not a virtual distinction is still has an identity in a sense, but its identity is not.
But a thing to be a part must have an identity. Mm-hmm. Every part has an identity, right?
It must have a distinct identity, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the ways that we can define if a being is being affirmed as being divinely simple, right, is if any part of that thing, which means something that is identifiable, right, is identical to the whole. This is one of the ways that they define divine simplicity, right? So if you're going to say that omniscience, for example, or any of the attributes is not identical to the whole, then you have to say that the whole exists composed of several identities, things that are parts, because those things have distinct and separate and non-identical identities. Do you understand the point I'm making?
Well, the first thing I'd have to Ashadi's would be: do they pose the question? Do they pose the belief that it's a real distinction? That's very important. Now, if they believe it's a virtual distinction, which I don't believe they do, I believe they believe it's a real distinction, but still. Emma, what I mean by real distinction? Okay, by the way, Adam said Al-Haq said he'll come back in 5 minutes. Is it or yes? So let's have because that's the most important thing. It's the aspect of parthood that you forgot to ask. Do you believe that the Quran is really distinct from Allah?
Do you? Do you think that a thing that is non-identical to another thing cannot be really distinct from it? Do you think it's possible for one thing to be really distinct to itself and also non-identical?
So hang on a sec. So first of all, I would stress.
Go ahead.
So okay, it's going to speak. All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I wanted to stress the point that what's his name, Alex said regarding the fact that multiplicity of identities does not necessarily entail parts. Because again, you have like all sorts of you can have a virtual distinction, a real distinction. So
I thought that we agreed on this.
Let me just elaborate, so you understand what I'm saying, right? Now, what compose parts is when it comes to the ontology. Right? This is I think the important thing when it comes to parts. When we speak about parts, identities, I don't think that necessarily entails parts. It's more so the ontology. When you have, for example, if we said that the essence is somehow composed, right, of there's like multiple separable things that they're just they're ontologically separate, that they somehow compose the essence. Now that is flat out just declaring that there's parts. So the ontology is the most important thing, not necessarily the identity.
Okay. Now, so it sounds to me like you're kind of equivocating on some language here, real quick, right?
I asked him, and this is really important. I'm gonna rephrase what he said in more of a philosophical way, just so it makes more sense, but maybe be more specific. But so I was just DMing Al-Haq about what he believes because he was gone. I was asking a question. He said they believe in a conceptual distinction. Basically, it's conceptually distinct, not distinct in actuality.
Okay, so then you would say, Al-Haqma here, then would say that Allah is actually identical to his speech. Is that the point that he's making, as I understand?
Yeah, by the way, Alex, I kind of doubt that in the Ash'ari view or the Sunni view in general, it's just about concept. I think it's there's an ontological distinction. Again, I'm personally not sure. Just for the record here.
He said it's a distinction in meaning, not a conceptual distinction. Stupid me. But
okay. Yeah, so if he's saying that there exists only a distinction in meaning between Allah's speech and his essence, then he must be saying that they are truly identical, that they are the same being. Allah is his speech.
Identical, yeah.
Ontologically identical.
Ontologically, yes. He says he's saying
identical in being. Yeah. So Allah is his speech.
No, let me finish, please. Let me finish for him. He's saying
that's why, Alex. By the way, I kind of doubt that it's just about meaning. I feel like it is more than meaning.
This is interesting.
I can send you pictures if you doubt what he's saying.
That's perfectly fine.
I mean, yeah,
I don't think he's thought about this.
Wants to talk to MVP, so bring him back a little bit. I'm just kind of filling in a little bit.
Do you agree with this, Alex? Do you agree that Allah is identical to his speech?
No, she does believe that his speech is created. It's
right. So you can understand why I thought this was so ridiculous, right?
I mean, to a degree, yeah, but I'm gonna look at Ashadi's. This is why I said when I first joined, I was like, I'm probably not gonna speak much because it probably has to do with the Ashadi creed. That's why, because mostly has to do with their creed. Because this debate with this syllogism would fall apart as the first premise that the Quran is uncreated. We don't believe that.
Okay, but anyhow, so. Let's just, I'm going to go ahead and restate the argument here, right? Before we move on, do you find any invalidity in that? I'm talking about the form, I'm talking about validity. Is there any objection to the form of this argument?
The only thing I would say is invalid is I don't think C. So you've kind of given me two C's. You've given me a C. Let me see. Here's my conclusion, and the conclusion you've given me in speech and in discussing with us is the conclusion that there's two divine beings. Okay, Well, the conclusion in your syllogism is that there's two uncreated things. I don't think.
Yeah, y'all were objecting to the word being, right? But you were fine with. I can rephrase that in a way where y'all would affirm it because you said that there were two,
I'm just
or
saying,
that these are non-identical things that exist is what the language y'all used, right?
I'm saying that I'm saying that maybe in their position, uncreatedness would not presuppose God, which is the position that I would note just as a side note that Palamas holds. There's in the very start of his. And this is a side note I think you might find it interesting. In the last chapter of the Triads, in the very first chapter, he literally says that for something to be God, it must predicated onto it must be all of the predications, not some of them. So I don't think that just saying there's two uncreated things that exist proves necessarily in their worldview that there's two divine beings.
Yeah, I actually wanted to tackle this point. It's really important because this seems. I mean, with all due respect, it seems absurd.
What seems absurd?
So
what I'm asking about here, what we're talking about is the
bro,
form
I
of the
didn't
argument.
get to say something, dude.
Right. I hope that this is related to the topic at hand, which is a form of the argument, right?
Sure. I'm strictly. I want to tackle a specific point that you mentioned. I wanted to tackle it, but we moved on a little bit. But I wanted to just
okay, fine.
mention that. Well, that comes the idea because you mentioned that with your syllogism that the somehow distinction would cause two divine beings. I mean, I don't know where you get that from. So,
well, the conclusion here follows necessarily from the premises.
No, it doesn't. So
if it doesn't, you're saying that there is an objection to the form.
So, let me just talk to this. So, would you say, for example, an energy, or would you say, for example, like a certain, for example, ideas or qualities truly exist? Would you say that this somehow qualifies them as a being, right?
Right. So, for example, a really good example of this is abstract.
For instance, this reminds me of an argument that somebody made earlier.
I think will do.
Let me just mention the syllogism. This is really important. Wait one second. Because I remember there's this argument that is out there against the Trinity made that goes as follows. The premise one, something can either exist as a quality or a being. So that was actually the first premise. Something can either exist as a quality or a being. Premise two, the persons of the Trinity are neither qualities or beings. And then the last premise, the conclusion was basically the persons of the Trinity do not exist. Right. So I agree that something can somehow exist as merely being. It could be a quality, right? It does not necessarily have to be a being, unless you're ready to justify that how it has to be a being, and with an essence and all that. But go ahead. But I don't think you can.
Yeah. So I didn't hear an objection to the form that we're talking about here, right? So when we go on here, actually, I can't remember the. Oh yeah. So you were asking if like concepts exist, right? And a good example of this is abstract concepts like numbers, right? The number 2 has true existence, right? I think most people would affirm something like that, right? Do you agree that the number 2 exists?
Sure.
Right, it has being, right?
Being?
Yeah, what's the difference between existence and being on your view?
I would say that, and not to speak for his view, but I would say by being, where you imply certain things, right? You're implying sort of what I could kind of give the classic hypostatic being of something with the hypostasis in essence, right? Now something can be doesn't mean it's a being, which would kind of implies like consciousness or personhood. That I don't think he believes is applicable necessarily to the
I really have no idea what you're saying there. You said it's the classic distinction between hypostasis.
Also, MVP, by the way, are you
saying classic example? I'm saying it's a classic example.
What would you say is the difference between a hypostasis and an essence? This might be important.
Oh, so I'd say essence is what something. The essence is an infamously kind of hard term. Ousia is kind of an infamously a hard term to describe, but it's kind of what something is in of itself, right? It's how again I'm struggling to conceive it, but I know what it means. It's like the way I think the way Basil puts it is it's like the quality of humanness or something along those lines, right? Like it's what makes something itself.
Right. The word "esse" that Ousia finds its etymological roots in just means to be, right?
Yeah, I don't think he's disagreeing necessarily that it has an ousia. What I'm saying is I think he's disagreeing that it has all of the properties of what we'd call a being.
And also, real quick, by the way, MVP, are you suggesting that something can can only truly exist as a being only, or are there other forms of existence?
Well, I mean, that is what existence is. To be is to exist, right? Those words are
So by that
practically
logic,
synonymous.
do the persons of the Trinity don't exist because they're not beings?
Well, the being of God exists in three instances, which are the three persons, right? So I would say that the being of the person is of the persons is grounded in the existence of the being, right?
Yeah, but
Not
Sure,
that
but
their
but
qualities or anything like
does
that,
every
right?
being have an hypostasis?
No. For example, numbers don't have any sort of hypostases as well at all,
Yeah,
right?
good point. I know. I was asking that for a
Right.
reason, and my other
So
reason would be, so would you describe, would okay, let's define, for the point of debate, let's define what we mean by being. What properties must something possess to be called a being? Now, is
yeah,
it
and
pure?
before that, like one second, before that, because my only concern was that, and this is what the vibe that I was receiving earlier, is that he's almost just suggesting that something can only truly exist as a being, otherwise you don't exist. To which this brings up my older, the argument that I mentioned, right? That it's actually an argument out there, I guess, the Trinity, that says that, oh, something can either exist as a quality or a being, and since the person of the Trinity, Christians would affirm that the person of the Trinity do actually exist, right? They're not just, they actually exist, and since they're not the qualities or beings, then they do not exist. Bringing the Trinity all apart. So I'm kind of telling you to be a little bit careful here, because he's suggesting something that I don't think he would want to
Yeah.
truly suggest.
If you think that that's a problem for me, I don't think you've understood what I've said here, right? So when I've expressed what being means, it literally just means to exist, right? To have existence in some way, shape, form, or fashion, right? Not material existence, not exclusively material existence, not exclusively immaterial existence, or any of that kind of stuff, right? So whenever we talk about the existence of Allah's speech, you guys affirm that there's a true ontology. There's something that exists out there that is Allah's speech, right? In whatever way you want to talk about. I don't want to go into, complex metaphysics with y'all or whatever here, but y'all have affirmed that Allah's speech exists in some sort of way, has a being to it, right? It's generated from
Not a
Allah or
being, no,
whatever.
a being, a kain, as it is said in Arabic. No, and that is why I was saying, like, but this claim of yours, then it would follow from that. Then, if I ask you, right, MVP, do the person of the Trinity actually exist? You'll tell me yes, and you're gonna tell me. So if by your claim, then they would have to be beings, intending polytheism, or
No,
or by
no.
your logic,
I
since
think
they
you're
cannot
misunderstanding
exist.
what being means there, right? So when this argument here, when it creates a distinction between being and quality, it's not saying that anything that exists must exist as a distinct being, right? But it's saying that anything that exists must is, right? Must exist, or it exists as a quality, as like a predicate of something else, right?
Okay.
A lot of people would say that predicates don't have true existence, that instead they have existence in the way that they affect beings, right? Like
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like he's pinging me a bunch. Awaz and our Omar, can you add Testis to the? You invite them. I'll talk with me to add them.
Who's that?
Testis.
Yeah, they will talk for me because I have
Who's
to leave.
Testis?
Person in the audience. There we go.
Why is he requesting to come up?
I guess Ahlak said it was. It's too late. It's too late. He's getting told to not to speak.
anyhow, can we please get back on topic here? I was dragged here to talk about a specific argument.
I would say this topic. I'm very concerned.
Abu Talal, just give me 5 minutes.
Goodness, this is Jenna.
Oh my god, Jenna.
Oh my goodness. Jenna told me one time in a recorded conversation that Allah is not necessarily omniscient. Did you know that?
Dude, no offense to Jenna, but I thought we banned all her accounts from the server. How did she make it back? Let me just.
Uh-oh. Adam slipped up.
Okay, so I ban her.
All right, Adam, just deal with that with Fawaz and DM sometimes. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't have the context of that. But yeah, so sorry, but to get back in topic really shortly. So I think the confusion is over what we think being is, right?
Hey,
now, if you're defining,
give me media terms real quick.
Huh?
Give me media terms real quick.
Okay. If you're defining being as just being existence,
what was her name? What's her username? Test or something like that. There we go, right there. That'll be a fun one. That's the recording where she, in our conversation, she rejected that Allah was necessarily omniscient.
But by the way, just her identity is even like, there's a recording for where she insults Islam and all that. So, and she said she was an atheist, so people are confused as to what she is in the first place.
Yeah.
She's just known as a big troll. So I don't know.
To get back on the topic of the debate, but when it comes to being, the question, I think the issue is over what we understand being to be. Now, if you're saying being is simply existence, and you said, I believe in yourself, that existence doesn't necessitate distinction, right? We can say things that we can say, like, I don't know, my fingers exist, but they're not necessarily really distinct from my hand, or something along those lines. Something vague.
No, I think everyone would affirm that there's a true distinction between your fingers and your hands.
I'm giving a bad analogy. I'm giving an analogy that's not probably perfect. What I mean is that there exist distinctions between things that are not necessarily real distinctions, or that existence is not necessarily.
That would be a real distinction.
Okay.
What you're talking about is deprived of unity, right?
Dude, oh my gosh, this guy. Okay. This guy.
Well, I mean, you're saying completely false things about real distinctions.
I literally said it was an imperfect analogy. But besides the point, if you want me to give a different, you're missing the point, and you're giving a red herring. So,
I don't see how that's analogical in any way whatsoever.
God, please, if you want to just recite like Stanford articles about Kant and even though you've never read his books, please do it some other time. Right now we're trying to have a debate.
You're adorable.
When it comes to the issue at hand here, the issue at hand here, pun unintended, is that would you agree that that being does not necessitate real distinction?
That being does not. What does that even mean? That's a nonsense sentence. Can something exist that is not really distinct from another existence? Can there be two beings? No, that's impossible. That's literally impossible. A being.
Then you are being intellectually dishonest, because we have the recording. You said just a while ago that being is only described. The only thing you need to define being is it bees. It exists. Okay. Now, you never said it. You never said it. It doesn't necessitate real distinctions, which would be something I asked you explicitly. Is there anything else? Are there anything else you could use to describe this? And you said no. So, I would note that you were being intellectually dishonest and hiding your definition of what being means. Now, going onwards.
Well, hold on. What are you trying to say here? You're saying that I'm being intellectually dishonest in saying that one being cannot be identical to a second being? Do you think that two different beings can be identical to each other?
MVP. My gosh. MVP.
What are you trying to say here?
That's not what he's saying, bro. That's not what he's saying.
My point is,
maybe you can say it one more time.
I asked you, and we have it's recording. I asked you, is there any other things, any other ways, any other necessities for existence? Any other necessities? Anything else besides simple existence? And you said no. Now, non-distinction would literally be another necessity.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is that because whenever I offered a definition for existing, I don't think you said, is there any other things that are necessarily true about a thing that exists? Which I think that's what you're understanding I said, right? Because I mean, there's hundreds of things that are probably necessarily true about things about a given thing that has an existence, right?
I literally asked you. I literally asked you for something to be a being, what necessities does it have? And you said existence, and that's it.
Yeah, but wouldn't
is it a necessity for something for a being to? Is it a necessity for a being to be non-distinct to any other beings?
It necessarily follows from something existing that it cannot be something else, right?
Okay. But the point is.
So what you're saying is
what?
No.
What
okay, please go ahead.
the point is that I'm telling you is that you
Mhm.
are being intellectually dishonest in your definition of being,
Uh-huh.
and don't scoff at it because I know.
When-
Again,
whenever-
I know. Again,
whenever-
and to clarify for everyone in the audience, I'm not ad homing him. I'm playing with my food a bit here. No.
Oh, that's too funny, Alex.
I'm
Alex.
not.
No. Come on, you're playing
I'm
with my
not-
food. Let me
I'm
squirm.
not.
Right?
I'm not telling.
Please let me
I'm
squirm.
not, I'm telling you that you're being.
Mhm.
I'm telling you that you're being intellectually dishonest because you
Alex,
think
when a
you've read.
person-
You've read a. I know. I'm not even disagreeing with you that it's a necessity. I've never said that. I'm saying.
Alex.
I'm saying that you didn't mention that as a necessity, so you're being intellectually dishonest because we're
When-
trying to. I said from the start, let's
Oh, my
define what we
goodness.
necessitate as being, and now you're saying, "Oh my goodness," because you got caught being intellectually dishonest because you've read hundreds of Stanford articles and never read a
No, I'm
book in your
saying,
life.
oh my goodness,
You
because
don't know what
I'm
you're talking about.
playing with my food, right? So, Alex, whenever a person makes an affirmation, are they held responsible for only that affirmation, but also its implications?
The
Which
issue
is
that I asked. The issue is that I asked you.
no. Can you
No,
please answer my question here?
No. So the question, the issue is that MVP,
Mhm.
you seem to not comprehend what I've said. So.
Oh,
I'm
I understand
gonna,
it.
I'm gonna restate it one
And
more
I'm
time.
trying to point out no. Before you restate it one time, let me
okay.
respond to it.
So if
Okay.
no.
So
if you-
maybe it'll be clear from my
Okay, guys,
response
just,
whether I
just,
understood it or
balance
not.
it a little bit.
Sure. So let me give an analogy first, right? If I ask Alex, "Is math true?" and he says yes, and I say, "Oh, is there anything else about mathematical facts that are true?" and he said, "Math is true," right? It would be understood that he's affirming not only just that explicit statement, but also everything that is implicit in the statement or necessarily follows. Now, what he seems to want me to do here is whenever he asks this question, to state every implication in my definition or whatever the case is there, right? But I essentially did that by making a statement that has implications. Now he's saying, oh, there is this other implication in this, which is that a thing must not be identical to another being. And since I didn't explicate that, and rather it simply lays implicit, that I'm being intellectually dishonest, right? But I would say that it would be intellectually dishonest for a person to affirm the truth of a reductio ad absurdum, which the truth of reductio ad absurdum follows from the truth of not only what a person explicitly affirms, but also what he implicitly affirms, what is implicitly in that affirmation. If a person affirms reductio ad absurdums to be valid argumentation, then that person has to then affirm that a person's affirmations are not only their explicit affirmations, but also that which is implicit, and the non-identicality between distinct beings is implicit in what I said. So hopefully you understood that, Alex.
So the issue is that, again, you don't understand what I'm saying. Two things, actually. Firstly, ironic that you just affirmed that there's an aspect of truth in ad reductios, even though you said that wasn't true a while ago. So you're contradicting yourself. But secondly, when it comes to that, funnily, the issue is I asked you, what properties, what attributes, for lack of a better term, what I mean here is how would you describe, what things does a being have that it needs to exist, right? What are its necessary properties? All right, I asked you, and you said only existence. Okay, the issue with that statement is, yes, I agree with you that it's implied that
he agrees.
Yeah, I do agree with you. But the issue is when I ask you, hey, state the necessary, although it's implied, implications aren't necessarily true. Okay,
implications aren't necessarily true.
No,
really. Will you say that one more time into the microphone?
Yeah.
Alex, are implications, if the statement is true, is that which is implied from it necessarily true?
Let me ask you a question, MVP. Have you ever? No. I'm
this
responding.
This is funny because
MVP,
it demonstrates
MVP,
a complete lack of familiarity.
I know you.
Yeah,
deductive argumentation, right?
Alex,
Literally a deductive argument.
MVP.
Oh my goodness, you're too funny, man.
Come on, buddy. Come on. Listen, I know you've never conversed with someone outside of your basement.
Wait, who brought him down? No.
Misclick.
Dude, whoever's doing this, oh my god.
He
I don't want
misclicked.
It was me. I misclicked.
Yeah. But I know, as I was saying, I know you've never got outside of your basement to converse with people. But if you would, sometimes when you do, you say things, and those phrases have implications.
Uh-huh.
So So sometimes if I said a phrase,
And whenever I say something, I also am
Does-
affirming its implications, right?
does that
And
mean,
you literally just said,
no, MVP. Please stop talking and listen. Okay, I know it's hard. I know you only hear your voice in your head, but come on, buddy, come on.
okay, I think I've had enough of this topic. If you want to get back on the topic, this is ridiculous.
I'm bringing this up because of the fact that. By the way, when it comes to people claiming I'm ad homing him, I'm not ad homing him. It would be ad hom if I said MVP is a retard, therefore he's wrong, which I haven't said. I've said that I've insulted him.
You've only said that I've made it out of my basement, never read a Kantian article. But of course, you said earlier that I spend all my time reading Kantian articles or whatever.
But did I say that's why you're wrong?
Alex, you're a funny guy.
You don't know what an ad hom is. Anyways, continuing onwards.
Okay.
My point was that you're being intellectually dishonest. And why am I bringing this point up? I'm bringing it up
because you want to distract from the topic at hand.
No, that's not.
Okay, let's get back on the topic at hand then.
No,
This is cute and adorable. Okay, fine. Finish your point, and then we can get back onto the topic at hand. I won't respond to it
because I understand. I want to be on the record that you're clearly intellectually dishonest, and no one should trust you.
Cool.
Now, when it comes to this topic, the issue is that I asked you explicitly, what are the necessities of existence, and you said are necessary of being, and you said existence, and that's it. The issue is that it is a necessity for a being to be, distinct from other beings, from all other beings. A cannot equal B, and also A be a being, and B be a being, right? Now the thing is that the issue with this is that while I agree, it can be implied that that's your statement. The issue is that when I ask you to explicitly state something and you don't do it, that's intellectual dishonesty, MVP. And I know it's hard for you to grasp that, but it's true. Now, it is intellectual dishonesty when I ask you to state something explicitly and you don't state it explicitly. Especially when the point is when we're literally the entire crux of the argument is over distinction, and then you don't bring up the fact that that's what you mean by being. Yes, that's being intellectually dishonest. Now, which is funny. Now, when it comes to the thing what you said about implications, what do I mean by sometimes implications are not necessarily true of affirmation of the person saying them? What do I mean by that? If I said, for example, I don't know. I can't think of an example because it's a very stupid thing to say. But you can make statements, and sure, you are. It can be implied you're affirming them. You're affirming further statements. Necessarily, they don't affirm those, right? For example, I could say the Trinity implies tritheism, and that could be, let's say for the sake of argument, that's true. I know you don't believe it's true. Let's say for the sake of argument, it's true. Doesn't mean you affirm polytheism, right? Now, does it mean you can conclude that the Trinity is polytheism and that one would have to affirm it? Yes. But you don't know that. If you're just implying it, doesn't mean you affirm that explicitly. I asked you to explicitly state this, and you refused, and you did not do so. That is intellectual dishonesty, MVP. And the reason why I bring it up is because of the fact that repeatedly in this debate, you have acted very disrespectful to me, and I've acted disrespectfully back, in all honesty. That's why I acted disrespectfully, by treating everyone like they're little kids and they don't understand what you're talking about. And the way you do this is by using obscure terms that are inaccurate, like a valid argument, even though that term is logical validity, or unification of meaning, which is always referred to as being, not meaning, right? I've never seen that term in my life. Never once. I've seen being multiple times, but I've never seen meaning, right? So you're being intellectually dishonest. I mean, simply put, you're being intellectually dishonest by using terms. And by the way, what you described is literally, no, I never said valid argument was an esoteric term. I said it's an uncommon term. I said if you're usually referring to that term, it's by using logical validity. Don't think I can't read what you're saying. And if you're gonna respond to me, respond to my face, please, MVP. I know it's a bit hard for you, but you can do it. I believe in you. Now, when it comes to the other thing, what you described, by the way, with unification or unification of, I forget what you pronounce it because I don't say that often, of meaning is literally the same thing as unification of being. You even gave the example Duns Scotus gives in his book that I've read. Okay? So, I mean, it's the same thing, buddy. He literally gives the example of goodness. Duns Scotus does. I know it's the exact same argument he gives. And he phrases it almost the exact same way. So you probably read Duns Scotus, surprisingly.
Okay,
So there
all
you
right.
go.
Oh,
There's
well,
my
once
argument.
again,
You've been
once again,
intellectually
you're saying that I
honest, and you've
have read a book, but earlier you said I haven't read any books. Whatever. Okay, so have I or have I not read?
Oh no,
Duns Scotus?
I was being hyperbolic.
I think we've gone ahead, and the reason I came here was to confront what Hochma was saying. I think everyone here agrees that Hochma was wrong about that, right?
No, wait
I
a
think my purpose is
Well,
completed
he's
here,
back, so he
right?
can defend himself. So he had to go, but now he's
You
back,
guys
yeah.
all agreed that he was off base on that, right?
Wrong
That
in
affirmation.
Wrong in what?
That Orthodox Catholics and Protestants are similar to Plantius in that they believe the essence cannot be predicated of anything whatsoever.
Do you
Pretty
believe
funny.
the essence cannot? Do you believe the essence of God can be predicated?
Yeah, we can say that. For example, one of the things that we can say is that the essence of God is unlike all of creation, right? So its holiness, right, which is an affirmation made in the Old Testament, is a true predication. Holiness means other, right? So we can make true predications, right? Plotinus said that we can make true predications. Practically every Eastern Orthodox, Protestant, and Roman Catholic says that we can make true predications.
Where did Plotinus
Ask Alex. He affirmed it. First of all, he talked about the only predication that Plotinus would make of the monad was that it is other, unlike existence, whatever the case was, whatever he said there, which is one of the many predications that he makes about that. We can also look at the monad as being the ontological source of the emanation of the dyad. So another true predication that Plotinus would make and did make in his work is that the monad can be predicated in the sense that it is the source of origin for the emanation of the dyad, right?
So how would you
also Plotinus, on his view, the immaterial is in a certain way related to the monad as well. So there's a plethora of predications that Plotinus would truly make about the monad. So I came here to establish that you're completely off your rocker about all these things. I have both of the other participants have agreed with me that you were off your rocker on this. And I think it's time for me to leave. It was a pleasure speaking with you guys. Do you have any last questions before I go?
Wait a minute. Your argument is saying, if we say that speech of God is distinct from that essence, then we would have two uncreated beings.
Right, so, and you guys have no idea what being means. You've equivocated on it several times. I've spent more than enough time on this. It is time for me to leave. If there are any final questions...
VP, you really... this is just a way to kind of... Oh, yeah, say I did this.
Don't run away from me.
Right, I'm summarizing the interaction.
Are the hypostases distinct from the divine essence?
I'm going to go ahead and leave here. It was a pleasure speaking with you guys.
Are the hypostases distinct from the divine essence?
Okay, yeah, clearly...
Yeah, clearly this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a...
He's a
funny guy. He's a funny guy.
I was about to confront him about his own argument.
Yeah.
If he